Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to talk about a world where people are making fortunes, building entire businesses, and closing huge deals, all without a single physical thing ever changing hands. Welcome to the fascinating and, yeah, very high-stakes world of virtual economies.
You've got people building actual, real-world fortunes from assets that only exist inside online worlds. A classic example is An Shi-chung. Her avatar in the game Second Life became a legit millionaire just by developing and selling virtual real estate. And we're not talking about play money here. This was a genuine business empire built entirely out of pixels.
And the scale of some of these deals? It's just mind-boggling. Look at this number. That's how much real money someone paid for a single virtual nightclub on an asteroid in a game called Entropia Universe. $635,000 for something that you can't even touch.
And that, right there, brings us to the most important question in all of this. If you can spend hundreds of thousands of real dollars on virtual property, what's stopping the game company from just deleting it? Who really owns your pixels when push comes to shove?
So to really get what's at stake here, you have to understand that these aren't just games people play for a few hours. No, they're persistent, interactive worlds with their own economies, where people are investing enormous amounts of their real time and their real money.
So what's the difference between this and just a regular video game? Well, a couple of things are absolutely key: persistence and interactivity. Persistence means the world keeps on going even when you log off. And interactivity means users can actually create their own stuff, their own content, which becomes the foundation for the entire economy.
Okay, so to figure out the rules of these virtual worlds, we actually have to start with the rules that govern almost everything we do online. And that's the basic principles of any electronic contract.
Every single contract, whether it's online or in the real world, starts with an offer. Just think of a website listing a product for sale. The company is basically saying, hey, we will give you this thing for this amount of money. That's the offer. Simple as that. And this is where you come in. That Buy Now button, that little checkbox that says, I agree, when you click that, you are officially signaling your acceptance of their offer. It's really the digital version of a handshake, and yeah, it is legally binding. So, and this is the really crucial part, that click isn't just a formality. The instant you click that button, a contract is formed. The whole system is designed to make it happen automatically right then and there. But here's the twist, and trust me, it is a big one. When you buy something digital, doesn't matter if it's software, an ebook, or a shiny virtual sword, you're almost never actually buying it. You're not getting ownership. What you're getting is a license. And a license is just permission to use it, usually under very, very specific rules. And this is where it gets a little tricky, right? Companies use these words we all understand, like buy and sell, because it's simple. But if you read the fine print, the terms of service, it makes it super clear that you're only licensing the item. The company still owns all the underlying code. All right, so now let's look at what happens when this license not a sale model, combined with those one-sided agreements we all click through without reading, leads to absolute disaster for the people who use it.
Our case study for this is a huge fraud that went down inside the sci-fi game EVE Online. A bank, run by a user, that was holding assets worth tens of thousands of real dollars turned out to be a total and complete scam.
It played out just like a classic Ponzi scheme. A player, using the name Callie, starts a virtual bank and promises these amazing returns on investment. Thousands of players, lured by these promises, started depositing their in-game currency. Some even converted real money to get in on it. The bank eventually held the equivalent of 170,000 US dollars. And then one day, Callie and all the money just vanished.
So what did the game's operator, a company called CCP, do about it? Absolutely nothing. They flat out refused to step in or pay back the victims. And why? Because their terms of service, which every single player had agreed to, basically said that fraud and theft were an expected part of the game experience. The contract they clicked I agree on gave them zero protection.
Now, it's scandals exactly like this one that force the legal system to start asking a really fundamental question. Can these virtual items, these things people are spending tons of real money on, actually be considered property in the eyes of the law? So to figure that out, courts started using this legal test that came from a case about a domain name, of all things. To be considered property, an intangible thing has to meet 3 criteria. 1, it has to be clearly definable. 2, you have to be able to exclusively possess or control it. And 3, you have to have a legitimate claim to that control. A lot of people argue that virtual items, they check all 3 boxes.
And this exact question was put on trial in a landmark case. A user named Mark Bragg sued Linden Research, they're the creators of Second Life, after they seized a bunch of virtual land he'd invested thousands of dollars in, and then they just shut down his account.
Now, Linden Research just pointed to their terms of service, which pretty much said they could do whatever they wanted, but the court wasn't having it. In a huge win for users, the judge called their agreement unconscionable, which is just a legal way of saying it's outrageously unfair. It was a completely one-sided contract, and the court refused to enforce it.
So you might be thinking, okay, an interesting story about some online game, but what does any of this have to do with me? Well, it turns out everything. Because these same power dynamics, they apply to pretty much every single service you use online.
That Bragg case shows that we're not totally powerless. There are legal tools. Unconscionability can be used to fight back against terms that are just ridiculous. Another one is called promissory estoppel, which is a fancy way of saying a company has to keep its promises, even the ones they made in their marketing. And of course, there are consumer protection laws to fight practices like, say, calling something a sale when it's really just a temporary license.
And at the end of the day, that's the big takeaway here. The legal fight over who owns some pixels in Second Life is really the same fight we're all in every single day. Whether you're buying a movie online, posting a photo, or signing up for a new app, you are clicking I agree, and you're entering into a contract that was written entirely by the other side.
Which leaves us with one last massive question. These digital spaces, they're not just games anymore. They're where we work, where we socialize, where we invest. So as more and more of our lives move online, who do you think should be writing the rules? The companies who build the platforms, or the millions of users who actually bring those worlds to life?